Sadly, our Vegas Golden Knights are no longer in the playoffs. The Dallas Stars took care of business the other night, taking care of them 4-1 in a game where they were up 2-0 in the third period. They just blew it. So the guy we have with us on the line right now, one of the smartest, well, not only one of the smartest guys I know, but certainly when it comes to the NHL, a mega super fan when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. I want to get his take on it. Oh, yeah, he's also six-time World Series of Poker champion, Daniel Negreanu. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us again. How are you?
What's up, Daniel?
I'm doing great, guys. How about yourself?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. We always talk about serious subjects on the show,
Constantly.
but it's always nice
For
to talk.
hours on end.
It's always nice to talk a little hockey with you, Daniel. So I'm watching the game, as obviously you were as well the other night. They're up 2-0. I'm thinking to myself, you got to get that third goal, right? You can't keep them in this game. You got to get that third goal. Daniel, I thought in the third period, from like the 5 minutes into the third period to really the end of the game, I thought it was the worst 15 minutes of hockey that the Vegas Golden Knights arguably have played all season. I mean, what would you say to that?
Well, it was really interesting, right? Because, Dallas is an interesting team in that, everyone looked at the last couple series and they scored a lot of goals, and they're like, well, where did that come from? How did they get this offense all of a sudden? But if you remember, about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5, Dallas scored a lot of goals and couldn't keep them out. Mm-hmm. Then they made a huge switch in terms of philosophy and coaching. Mm-hmm. They became one of the best defensive teams in the league, but they still have a lot of that firepower. As far as what Vegas was able to do leading up to that was control the game, play really smart defensively, and it looked like, in the third period, as you said, it seemed a little bit more lax and a little maybe fatigue or, who knows what. But I think a lot of it, frankly, has to do with the system that DeBoer put in place to have the D-men pinch a lot more than the team's used to. And when you look at guys like Braden McNabb and Nate Schmidt, two of our top shutdown defensemen, they were often gassed and feeling like, they just didn't have enough energy to come back,
good point.
odd man rushes and things like that.
Yes.
That's not necessarily to say that's what happened in the third specifically, but in general, I think that DeBoer really, misuses the assets that he has, trying to sort of formulate them into something that they're not.
Daniel, I'm so glad you brought that up because, listen, DeBoer is, let's be honest here, right? He's an above-average coach. He's had some success, but he's the one who was asked last week about this team compared to some of the other teams he's taken pretty deep in the playoffs, and he said this is the most talented team, the best team that he's ever coached. With that being said, I think and I know you agree with me on this because we talked about this when they fired Gallant. I thought it was the wrong decision. I thought they fired him for the wrong reasons because there were management issues between him and Gallant. In my personal opinion, and this might be a difficult question for you to answer, but in my personal opinion, if Gallant is coaching this team, I certainly don't think they lose 4-1 to the Dallas Stars. What do you say to that?
Well, I say first and foremost this, that if you look at the other side, those players were playing their heart out for Rick Bowness because they love that man.
Right.
Okay? Gerard Gallant, arguably, well, not even arguably, Gerard Gallant and Marc-Andre Fleury both were the faces of this franchise, beloved by the city.
Yes.
Absolutely, those players would just jump on a landmine,
Agree.
for him.
Yep.
So there's no question that a lot of the switches and changes and, the tinkering from DeBoer, and a lot of people point to record and go, Vegas wasn't doing so hot. When Gallant was fired, he was the coach of the All-Stars.
Right.
He would be the best record in the league. Now, granted, they had a 4-game losing streak.
Right.
The first one in 3 years.
Right.
And they
So
axed
what?
the guy precipitously. And they did it in such a shady way. Listen, I get it, right? Business is business. You make decisions that are designed to improve your team, but you don't have to be shady, dishonest, and deceitful about it.
They were.
Telling Gallant for weeks, we're going to work on an extension. He comes into the office thinking, oh, well, I guess they've got, an offer for me. Oh, no, here's your offer.
Right.
Get out.
That's so messed
You're
up.
fired.
Yeah.
It's just they've done such a horrible job of really destroying something that was like the golden egg, the goose egg. Like you had people in this city loving this team, and specifically Gerard Gallant and Marc-Andre Fleury.
Right.
And to treat them the way that they've been treated, along with Dave Pryor and some of the other members who have left, is really just blowing it beyond any capacity I thought possible.
Can I ask you what you just said, Daniel? Can you go into detail? We know how they treated Gallant. Talk a little bit about Marc-Andre Fleury, because I agree with you on this one. The way he was treated and not used. Can you just go into that a little further? Your thoughts on that?
Sure, absolutely. So plenty of reports have been released from various sources that are reliable that in early June, Marc-Andre Fleury was being told, hey, don't worry, you're the number one. We're adding Leonard just in case, there's an injury or something like that.
Oh,
okay?
wow.
So they're telling him that in early June. They're telling Lehner, or that they're going to work on a 5-year deal with him, so you can start looking for houses in this whole deal because you're going to be our guy going forward. So they're telling one guy one thing, they're telling the other guy the other thing, right?
Ugh.
And to do that to the face of the franchise, the one who, brought this team to the finals in the first year and, again, really, he was just one of the nicest guys in the league, to just lie to him in the way that they did. You saw, obviously, the sword in the back of Fleury with DeBoer's name on it from his agent. That doesn't come from nowhere.
Sure.
So, you could have just told Fleury, listen, Fleury, since your dad passed, maybe we're not so sure that you're our number one guy. We're going to bring in Lehner, and you can win the job, or maybe you could lose the job, but this is what's happening. And listen, at least be honest with him and up front. Yeah. Don't string a guy along. It's just unnecessary and wrong.
Agree.
Yeah, it sounds despicable. But people talked about Gerard Gallant and how tough he was to talk to, with the media and stuff. I thought that was actually kind of a charming element about him. And you're right that the entire city of Las Vegas was behind Gallant and Fleury, and that's not the case with Lehner and DeBoer. Do you think that, this team on paper was extremely deep, very, very talented, two, successful, one of which probably be a Hall of Famer goaltender. Do you think that Pete DeBoer will have a team this talented ever again in Las Vegas?
Well, that's the interesting question now with the offseason. And also I want to mention, too, DeBoer certainly was not liked at all, right? Because he was the San Jose coach. He was getting in fights with Gallant. We're taught to hate this guy, and all of a sudden we're supposed to love him? That hasn't transitioned. As for Lehner, Lehner's done absolutely nothing wrong. This is a really good guy, Robin, and I do think the fans here have embraced him, and his relationship with Fleury is a testament to that. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. He played his best. He doesn't get to choose who goes in net. He's done everything that, was asked of him, right? So it's important to sort of differentiate between those two. But as far as the team going forward next year, you have to imagine, certainly you cannot keep both Fleury and Lehner. That's $12 million off the books for two goalies. That is not a possibility. Lehner is a free agent. He could walk. If he sees the way in which Fleury was treated, it's kind of like this, right? If you start having a relationship with a married woman, she leaves her husband and then starts wants to marry you. Don't you ask yourself, well, if she did it to him, why not me?
Right.
I like that
so then you have
analogy.
to ask yourself, if you're Lehner, look how they treated the face of the franchise. They discarded him, just treated him so poorly. DeBoer's decision, and it goes back to Game 6 in Vancouver. His decision to not play Fleury in Game 6 was a big middle finger to all the fan base and everyone, because what it did is this. It's a back-to-back. Going into Game 6, Lehner had a 1-7-2 record in back-to-backs. Fleury has not lost to Vancouver in 14 years in regulation. But you're telling me you don't trust Fleury in Game 6 or Game 7 to play in this game? The decision was simple. Put Fleury in Game 6. If he loses, right, you got Lehner for Game 7. If he wins, great.
I agree.
You go back to whatever you want to go to. But his decision to not start Fleury in Game 6 was one of the worst coaching decisions I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've spoken to people high up in the hockey world who were puzzled by it, and they thought it had to be personal. It had to be ego-related. It had to be I'm the boss. I'm an arrogant jerk.
Wow.
Fleury, go sit in the corner.
That's saying a lot. That says a lot for somebody like you who have been such a huge hockey fan your whole life. So let me even take that a step further. Who do you blame more here? Do you blame George McPhee? Do you blame Kelly McCrimmon? Who are the people? Both of them? Obviously Foley is, I would imagine, completely out of the mix when it comes to hockey decisions. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Wrong.
I don't know. Is
wrong?
He?
Wow.
Okay, so tell me then, because you know more than me. So tell me, you think Foley was a part of this?
Do you think these decisions are going to be made without his okay? He's a very hands-on guy. So I think the trio, is all basically at fault for especially the communication. Look at Dave Pryor, right? Dave Pryor was ushered out of, from the team, and it did not end well. Months later, you have McCrimmon saying, he's still with the organization and helping us out. And Dave Pryor's like, what are you talking about? You guys fired me months ago. I have nothing to do with you.
Wow.
The deceit and the lies are they all work in concert, right? To put these things forward. The news of what they did to Eric Halla is just disgusting.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I know. I remember
so 4
that.
4 days before he's getting married, Halla's getting married in 4 days. He's hired the Vegas Drumline, this is going to be great. Well, listen, I don't have any problem with you trading a guy, but he comes to the rink and his parking pass is deactivated. You can't even wait. You can't even wait till the guy packs his bag before you deactivate it. You really need to have an armed guard take Pryor to his desk and then escort him out of the building.
That was way over the top.
Necessary?
Yeah, that was so over the top when I read that. So I have to ask you this then, Daniel, and listen, you know more than me. I take your word for it. With that being said, you're such a huge fan, right? As am I. I'm a member of the media, but of course I root for the Knights. Does this affect you at all? Listen, the players did nothing wrong, right? We know that, and you made a very good point there. Players did nothing. But I got to be honest with you, it affects me a little bit. I mean, I still want them to win, but when I hear these stories and the way they treated Fleury and the way they've treated Gallant, it bothers me, man. I'll be honest with you.
It's been very difficult for us to get anybody from the Knights on our show, Brian.
Well, that's another story that Daniel might not be aware of. But I'm going to say this publicly right now on the air. The Vegas Golden Knights are not fantastic at dealing with the media. It's not just us. It's other members of the media. Sometimes they are extremely difficult. Sometimes they aren't. But sometimes it's not as easy, let's just put it this way, as it should be at me being doing this for 20 years. And I don't know if that's just the entire culture of the organization. We're happy to promote, Daniel, when they do charity work and charity events, and we praise them when they deserve to be praised. And what happened after October 1, the way they handled it was great. But I guess my question to you is, based on everything I just said and what we've been talking about, does that a factor at all with you as buying season tickets and being a fan? Can you talk to me about that?
Yes, big time. First and foremost, you're absolutely right. They run the thing like a military base. They don't want any detractors. They don't want anyone. It's almost like a propaganda. They don't want people saying bad things. And if you do, you're on the out. The way in which they treated their previous media teams like Gismondi, Brad May, and Ali Lozoff, who were Emmy Award-winning, people, that they don't have a good word to say about the organization going forward. As far as from a fan perspective, I mean, I'm not part of that sort of ideal where, you're a fan of a team, you stick through it no matter what. I don't buy that. I get to choose who I root for, and when an organization treats its players so poorly, I can root for the players to succeed, and I do, because I like the players, right? Having said that, I found myself, and I couldn't help it, I found myself laughing when they lost in overtime and rooting for Dallas.
Wow,
because
did you really?
In the first two seasons, I cried. I was in tears. I was anxious in the overtime against San Jose.
Right.
I was a diehard for 2 years, but watching systematically them destroy the relationship with the fan base, you have to ask yourself.
But this is a big deal.
When you want to make a big decision or a big change, right? How will the fans see this? When you're so arrogant that you give zero thought to it whatsoever in how this looks. When you cut the head off Gallant and Fleury, the two most beloved members, they love those guys. They don't love you. Those are the ones they love. So if you're going to make those changes, you better be right.
Right.
You were wrong.
But Daniel, this is a big deal for a number of different reasons. Number one is everybody knows who you are, certainly in Las Vegas, right? You're a likable guy. You've done a lot for this city yourself, and you've supported the Vegas Golden Knights. This is a big deal on a lot of fronts.
You've been one of the biggest cheerleaders as far as a Vegas celebrity, which you considered in the entire city.
Of course. So Daniel, I have to ask you this: are you considering not renewing your season tickets next year? I mean, obviously, you haven't gone to games lately. Assuming the pandemic is over with, are you considering not renewing your season tickets next year if, in fact, fans are allowed to go to games?
Well, I'm a hockey fan first, so I enjoy watching hockey. And I have a 10-year deal on my seats down low. I have 1-year deal on the 12 seats that I have up top, and I'll probably get rid of those because I don't really need them anyway. That's, sort of besides the point. But I do love to watch hockey, and I'll show up as long as I'm allowed in the building.
Yeah, I don't know if any of us will be allowed after this. No, but let me ask you this. If you had a chance to sit down with Bill Foley and talk with him as Daniel Negreanu, not the poker player, but the hockey fan, and how disappointed you are. I mean, what you just said is incredible, that you were laughing when they just lost. I didn't feel bad for the Knights either. But with that being said, if you had a chance to sit down with Bill Foley, Daniel, what would you say to him right now?
I would say that he needs to do a real gut check and say to yourself, you did such a great job in season one, from night one of, having the city embrace you. And that's going to matter, right? So when you're making decisions, listen, everyone has faith in the fact, and they see very clearly, you want to make this team the best it can be. And we all support that. We understand business is business. But it's going to be really important that you treat people with the respect and dignity they deserve. You have to be straightforward and honest with people. And it's like you said, it's the constant lack of transparency and lack of honesty in when they're delivering the message. It's okay to be honest with people. People can take it. You can say, listen, we're bringing in Fleury because we're not so sure, or you can be honest with the players themselves. It does matter, and it's going to matter going forward, right? Because people talk and players talk. So free agents that's thinking of coming to a certain place and they see what happened to Fleury here.
Good point.
I've had plenty of hockey people, I'm talking about Hall of Fame hockey members, that saw that and said, that's brutal. That's going to sting.
I agree. Can I take it even a step further, Daniel, if I may? And I've talked to other members of the media about this and big fans like yourself, and I've said, what's going to happen when they're not getting the fan support? What's going to happen when they go 2 or 3 years? And eventually it's going to happen. They're not always going to be a good hockey team. What's going to happen when they can't fill the arena? What's going to happen when they're not making the playoffs? Then they're going to be begging for people like you, Daniel, and your support. Then they're going to be begging for the media to be in there. So I asked that question to you, Daniel. What's going to happen when they're not a good hockey team? They're going to be begging for us to cover this team.
Well, here's what's unique about this market, and it was one of the selling points of this market, right? As I said when I was trying to, sell the idea of Vegas coming here, is that, they can avoid that, and it allows them to have an arrogance because they know that even if the building is not full of Vegas Golden Knights fans, people will travel, so they'll fill those seats, right? When Canadian teams come here, you'll feel the arena will be full. It just may be a different color. Right, when Chicago comes here, it may be red.
Right.
When the Rangers are here, you might see a lot more blue. So I think that there's like a feeling as though here's what could really hurt the organization, Mac. You do this to your fan base, and then the NBA comes along.
Right.
Right. If the NBA comes along, all of a sudden the love affair can be fractured to the point of no return.
And you're competing on the same nights as well in some cases. So that changes things from a home perspective. Do you think that this team was just overly successful in the first year and the organization recognized that they recognized the massive support when October 1 was part of that as well, and they've kind of taken it for granted?
I mean, to a certain degree, sure. I mean, I do think that, everything that they did was designed to try to make the team better. But in some sense, you sort of lost the magic of what this team was, right? So, everyone looked at the shot totals and, the way in which we played, and it looked like we dominated possession game or whatever, but we just weren't putting the puck in the net. Well, there was systematic differences to the way we played in year 1 through year 2 and through year 3. A lot of that was personnel-based. But you remember year 1, the Golden Knights were what? Transition team, right? They scored all their goals in the first two seasons. There were exactly 0 goals scored by the Golden Knights where the defenseman carried the puck into the zone.
Right.
0. Right? Well, this season, Shea Theodore's had a breakout season, and he's obviously one of the best players on the team. But there was an interesting piece written about Shea Theodore's offensive impact on the team. And this is insane to believe, but, they actually score more when the forwards score more when Theodore is not on the ice versus when he is on the ice. And a lot of that has to do with sort of systematic issues. And I think ultimately, who does that come down to?
Yeah.
It comes down to coaching and not recognizing, the personnel that you have and utilizing it in such a way that brings out the best in them. And I think that Gallant had a real good pulse in this team. He knew this team better. And when you listen to DeBoer say, I'm just getting to know this team, I'm like,
what
are we having a coach who's just getting to know this team when we're in prime position right now to contend? Why not go with what you had? Do you really think
that speaks volumes?
Do they really think that the switch from Gallant to DeBoer was the difference to
Yeah.
winning a cup? If they did,
Yeah.
McCrimmon the only thing he said when they fired Gallant was, "We just have a feeling." Well, that's some BS.
Yeah. Just have
a feeling.
It's like some idiot betting red or black at the roulette table. Oh, I have a feeling it's going to go on red.
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
Oh, so stupid. All right, so let me ask you this then. Now, I was a big fan of Gerard Gallant. I think he is a fantastic hockey coach. He was the right man for the job at the time. Well, obviously that ship has sailed. I think now, and I think Vegas needs a man with a personality. Now, DeBoer's not going anywhere. I'm not saying he is. He's not. He's going to be here for a while. But with that being said, I think of a guy like a John Tortorella, right? I love this man. Now, I'm from back east, New York, and when he coached the Rangers, he's got some good qualities and some bad qualities. But I think something that we can all agree upon is that he's a personality, right? Don't you think, Daniel, while it's just as important to get someone that knows hockey, that can win like a Gerard Gallant, don't you think for Vegas we need a personality? I just see this guy DeBoer, he's got 0 personality.
Yeah, no, I don't. Listen, I don't really think that that's necessary. And I also think, I like John Tortorella as well, as much as you do. Although, that sort of act wears thin after a certain amount of time. And I don't believe, going forward, that sort of old school tough mentality where, you're kind of a ball breaker to your players. I think Gallant's approach was simple.
He leaves them alone. Yeah.
You do the work.
Right.
I'll put faith in you, and you'll get to play and all that kind of stuff.
I love that.
He was very honest.
Yep.
He was not, people trusted in him. He was fair. He wasn't just always barking at you. He wasn't picking on anybody.
Just do your job. Yeah.
He was being straight with people.
Yeah.
And I think that especially for that team going into year 1, you're looking at a group of 23 guys who were all discarded from their past teams. So they may come in with a little bit of deflated confidence. And Gallant treated them with respect. Said if you play well, you're going to get time, et cetera, et cetera. And for him to be fired after a cup final with that team, a playoff finish where they were unlucky to lose in the second, all-star coach going in season 3 break. He had a 4-game losing streak, and you cut the head off of the coach. That is the most ridiculously stupid decision that I've ever seen, really, an organization make. It was horrendous.
Yeah, and for somebody like you to make a statement like that certainly means something. All right, last question for you, Daniel. We're looking ahead, assuming the pandemic is over. Game 1, the Vegas Golden Knights of the season next year. Who is going to be the starting goaltender, and what will the team look like next year? Who's going to be gone? Who do you think is going to stay? And who's our starting goaltender Game 1 of the season opener next year?
All right, so I mean, I don't think this is a lock by any stretch, but I do think it'll be Robin Lehner, and that means that there's no chance that Fleury's with this team next year, despite how much Fleury loves the city and the city loves him.
That sucks.
I mean, if Lehner signs now, the only thing that could happen is this, and someone made this point is like, so maybe Lehner's been promised a certain thing, but like we know this organization, their promises aren't worth very much.
Right.
So what we could end up happening is if Lehner does walk, and he has, a lot of people are going to be interested in his services. So he may be offered a better package and a better deal than what, we can afford to give him. So if he walks, now you've got sort of you've got Fleury in the loop here with a big old $7 million ticket that's going to be hard to move. And if you were to move him, you're going to have to retain some of that salary anyway. Mm-hmm. So this going to be a very dramatic offseason because you could end up seeing Fleury back in the net, right? Otherwise, there is the possibility they both walk. You get neither of them, and then we end up with like Jimmy Howard and Calvin Pickard or something like that in the Nets. As far as other guys that you would expect to be moved, I would expect Stasny to be on the block, because he's got a big ticket, and they might not need that sort of depth with guys like Cody Glass and Peyton Krebs in the mix. And I think on defense they may look strongly at Alex Pietrangelo. I would suggest that is going to be one spot that one free agent that they're going to look to attain. Getting rid of Stasny, as I said, and then the goalie thing. I think it's going to be sort of a saga in the offseason in terms of like how that works. Because listen, there's no guarantees. Robin has said quite clearly in past interviews, he's like, I'm not going to take a discount. He said
I don't
that
blame
in Chicago.
him. Yeah, I don't blame him. Yeah,
I'm going to take what I want. He wants a long-term deal, so a 5-year deal is going to be attractive to him.
Yeah.
But at $5 million, he'll be the most underpaid top-end goalie in the league. So.
Very true. He's a very capable goalie, and I tend to agree with you. I don't think we're going to see Marc-Andre Fleury here next year. But, hey, we'll have to see what happens in the next several months. I certainly don't have a ton of faith in the management, upper management at the Knights. Doesn't sound like you do either. But, Daniel, I always appreciate it when you take some time to join us. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk some hockey with you, man. You're a smart guy. Thanks so much for joining us, and good luck on the golf course this weekend, all right?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks a lot, Daniel.
Have a good one. That is Real Kid Poker himself, also a very good golfer, by the way, Danny Negreanu. Wow, there's a lot to dissect.
That was a candid interview.
We don't have enough time to dissect some of the stuff he said. We only got about 90 seconds here. But when Daniel Negreanu, the face of the fans, I guess, one of the big faces and a huge supporter, cheerleader, like you said, of the Knights, says that the Knights organization runs like a military operation. There's something very wrong.
And when he says that, he was actually rooting and laughing when the Knights lost, when they gave up a 2-goal lead
even I was
in the
surprised
elimination game.
Yeah.
Very surprising.
Even I was surprised to hear him say that, but that speaks volumes on his frustration, as we have frustration, too, as members of the media with this organization. Daniel's frustration as a fan is very, very telling. Let me tell you something. Whether it's McPhee or McCrimmon, these guys have or Foley, they have some soul-searching to do. The way they've treated the fans, the way they've treated the media, in my personal opinion, the way they've treated some of their own players is wrong.